What's good, everybody? Welcome to J Powell Music. Happy Halloween for those who celebrate and whatnot. Hope you get some candy that you can save throughout the year and eat throughout the year. I don't mean that, but I do wish you a happy Halloween. So if you're a fan of the channel, first time here, what have you, be sure to like and subscribe here on the channel. Hit the notification bell so you know when these guys come out. As you know, J Powell Music is a fan of music of all sorts and shares it on the channel here, just of various think pieces. Be sure to check the link above my head, the Twitch, which I'm gonna have some long form music conversations I speak. I just have to prepare for it a little more. Bear with me on that. You can follow me in the meantime, and then when I do have something up, you'll be notified. So if you can do that, definitely would appreciate it. I have the song whip there, the link there to check out my music if you'd like. There's my Instagram, and then obviously the YouTube channel. Today I want to talk about two different things. One thing I wanted to talk about was some of my favorite horror movie soundtracks. So since we're doing the Halloween thing, I'm not a big fan of Halloween. However, I can recognize a good soundtrack when I hear it. That definitely has freaked me out growing up throughout the years. Some of my favorite horror tracks. And you know what's interesting? I feel that when it comes to a scary movie, right? When you have a soundtrack that contests to the feeling, especially when it comes to being afraid. There's a lot of these movies now, they're very slasher-y, you know, where it's like the silence takes place for the music, and then when something happens, there's like that German 6 chord or that augmented chord that freaks people out or whatever. But I like music that freaks you out during the waiting for the jump scare. I think those are the really special pieces of music when it comes to composition. When you're scared, freaked out, going upstairs and you're not sure what's in there, but just the scariness of going upstairs and the music is creepy, I think those are some of the special things. So first thing I want to talk about was obviously, I guess I can pull it up here on this. Let's see. I'm kind of doing this on the whim here, so bear with me. But I was going to say John Carpenter, the Halloween films, the Halloween, I'll say like the first one, the OG ones. You know, I mean, how can you not be captivated by this theme? John Carpenter's the man, you know what I mean? So he has some of the scariest music, and obviously the Halloween series is definitely obviously there's a million Halloween films, but that original score, very beautiful, and very creepy, so it definitely adds to Mike Myers doing what Mike Myers does, just killing. But it's funny because if you take out the music, it's like this guy that walks really slow, and watching the movie, you're like, what's wrong with this guy? But when you put in the music, you're like, oh my God, get out, go, so it's kind of funny. But John Carpenter, the next score that I thought was really phenomenal, especially growing up, the original Omen soundtrack, Jerry Goldsmith. If you're not familiar with Jerry Goldsmith, he's composed a lot of the OG films, and especially horror films at that. But this is to me, this is one of the most terrifying soundtracks of a horror movie that I've ever listened to. The soundtrack, I would say, is even scarier than the film itself. Some would say the music is the scary factor, and the film is ridiculously stupid. But without the music for The Omen would just be silly as hell. But just those roaring choirs and crazy, just heart-aching strings and tension, just freaks you out. You really feel like, man, this kid probably is the devil. Probably is is the Antichrist. So horrifying soundtrack, I think, as well. When it comes to that, I'm trying to think of some other horrifying. The interesting thing about The Exorcist is that when I think of The Exorcist, which I still think is one of the most terrifying films ever, the theme is pretty creepy. But most of the film, most of the film, there's no music. And all the creepy parts, there's really no music. At least from my understanding, when I remember watching that film, there's really no music during those creepy parts, which is even more insane. And then obviously for The Exorcist, you have like those special editions where you see her like crawling down the stairs backwards and stuff, and like the crazy creepy piano stuff there. So yeah, that terrifying, terrifying stuff. I would say also Nightmare on Elm Street definitely had some creepies. You know, obviously Wes Craven, the master. Some really creepy stuff there. Really, I mean, this is to me, this is some of the first really like crazy scare tactic movies. You know, I remember, I want to say it was Nightmare on Elm Street, if I'm not mistaken. The last part of the film, and spoilers, the movie came out in the 80s. But the last part of the film, when he pulls his arm through the door and pulls the person into the door, like through the door, and then it cuts and it goes to credits. That was incredibly terrifying for me. And I think a lot of it was just kind of the motion graphics of him slowly pulling him. And it seemed like the frames were cutting when that was happening. Craziness. So Charles Bernstein, looks like he was the original, he was the composer for that, which is super dope. Another film that has crazy, and then also if you remember crazy, like, great scores that are just really terrifying, definitely put it into the comments. I would definitely say this isn't like a super horror movie, but M. Night Shyamalan's The Sixth Sense, I think the music is great for that. Really great. Definitely just, when you make a horror movie soundtrack, or at least from my brain, there really has to be tension there. You know what I mean? And there's just a ton of tension. And obviously one of my favorite, one of my favorite parts is when, that kid that had his head blown off and he's in the, he's in the closet freaking out, and just really terrifying, really James Newton Howard, really terrifying. You can see how terrified he is. Like, man, this kid's really freaked out. I feel kind of bad, but really great score for that one. James Newton Howard, shout out to James Newton Howard. He's one of my favorite composers. He also does, a lot of the M. Night Shyamalan's movies, such as Unbreakable, which is phenomenal. I think he did Signs too, if I'm not mistaken, which is also a good one. But obviously Sixth Sense is going to be always M. Night Shyamalan's best film. What are some other crazy horror movie soundtracks? I'm trying to think of. It's weird. The Leatherface, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I don't really think of the music when I see that. When I see the iteration of those films, I really don't. I don't know why. They're good films. And they're scary and whatnot, but I don't know. I don't remember being freaked out by the music really adding to it. I think obviously it did, but it isn't as memorable as like the Omen soundtrack, which that is the scary parts of the film, or these other films that I mentioned. I think another soundtrack, which is, let's see, I think I remember it being pretty good as far as the tenseness. The Hills Have Eyes. This is a very, 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 very controversial film, which I won't get into why. But as far as the film, I know this has been redone a few times, I think, but very well done. The second one's it's kind of stupid to me. I don't think it's not nearly as good as the first one. It seems very kind of like as far as just like, I don't say it's plausible, but just the setup of it seems very, if you take out the monsters and you put in just people, like it's just as terrifying to me. So that one, super good. Really good, great soundtrack. I think the last one that I'll mention that's just in my brain right now. Oh, I mean, obviously the Aliens films, great. Let's go to those. Aliens, arguably definitely one of my favorite movies ever of all time. James Horner, and then also the London Symphony Orchestra. Beautiful music. Does it add to the ambiance? Yes. I don't know if the music was great. It was a great driving force for the stress of these films. I don't know if it made it scarier. I think the sounds made it scarier than the actual soundtrack, in my opinion. Again, great music, beautiful music. Definitely creates the theme, builds the themes and whatnot as a score does. And then just trying to run to get the heck out of there. Great music. I don't know if it didn't freak me out. The scores didn't freak me out, but amazing score, great score. So let's say there. I was gonna give a nod to Rob Zombie. He's a really good director. Obviously, House of the Thousand Corpses, one of his debut films. I could be wrong about that as well. And his version of Halloween is exceptionally good. They should just release that back in theaters versus whatever they released in theaters, because I know that movie isn't good. But his iteration of Halloween, much better. Just hearing people talk about this new Halloween that's in the theaters. But The Devil's Rejects, even though it didn't have too much of an original soundtrack, the soundtrack that they put into the film, very good. I don't know if you'd call this necessarily a horror movie. It has horror elements, but had to shout out to Rob Zombie there, because that's definitely a good film. And his Halloween is fantastic. So, and this, as far as some honorable mentions, obviously Nightmare Before Christmas. Do we even have to mention Nightmare Before Christmas? Obviously Nightmare Before Christmas would be a part of this conversation as far as for great Halloween scores. Edward Scissorhands. It's anything that Danny Elfman does that surrounds around a Halloween horror element. Obviously Nightmare Before Christmas. And then obviously, which isn't talked about enough because this soundtrack is incredible, the Ghostbusters soundtrack. The Ghostbusters original soundtrack is insane. Is amazing. It's one of the best, and I'm referring to the old school soundtrack. This is the 2016 version. I'm referring to the one from the 80s, man. 1984. Yeah, this soundtrack's fantastic. Trying to see here. Yeah, the 1984 and then 1989. Awesome soundtracks. Great soundtracks. This is the original motion picture score. I'm more so referring to the various artist version where you got Bobby Brown and all them, but great stuff. So, but yeah, so I just wanted to rant a bit about some horror scores because I felt like it was appropriate for today. So, yeah. So again, have a safe Halloween today, everybody. I'm more of an old man hermit, not a big fan Halloween guy, but definitely can appreciate a good horror score when I hear it. So, thanks again, and I'll see you next video.